Good morning, my name is Gary Jones, and I have a story to tell. When I was 6 years old, I was just a regular kid, no different than any other kid, at least I thought I wasn't. During this time, that's when I realized this heavy feeling came over me. It was a feeling of sadness, a feeling that I wasn't used to just having it, being sad. I didn't have any reason. At 6 years old, you don't really have any reason to be sad. I had food on the table every day. I didn't eat much, but food was provided. I had everything that a kid's supposed to have had during my age. But like I said earlier, I used to feel sad all the time. Didn't know why I was feeling sad. I felt like I wanted to cry, but didn't have any reason to cry. I had everything that I wanted, especially love coming from the family. When I was turned about 8 years old, the feeling just hovered over me and stayed with me for a long period of time. And I didn't know how to tell my grandparents, my aunts and uncle, that I was sad because, see, I felt like crying most of the time. So I didn't want to tell anybody that I felt like crying. Because see, growing up, you was considered a crybaby. So how do you tell your parents, your grandparents, or your guardian that your mind hurt? I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. My mind was hurting, but I didn't know what was going on. So as I got a little older, I think it was around 12 years old, I began to think I knew what was going on, and I had already heard the word depression. Really didn't too much know what it meant until I was about 12 years old, and I started thinking that may be what was going on with me. I couldn't really share it with anyone because we didn't call it depression growing up. We used to call it crazy. As a matter of fact, I was one of those same kids that went along with my buddies and used to call other people that the grown-ups pointed out, they call it crazy. In reality, in retrospect, looking back, the people had a mental illness, in which we didn't know. We were just kids just going and telling people that these people walking down the street were crazy. But anyway, as I got a little older, past 12 years old, I began to play sports. And when I was playing sports, it was hard for me to articulate my plays. I couldn't remember too much. I got frustrated. I had anxiety, but at the time I didn't know I even had anxiety. But the coach used to get on me, like, Gary, you got to concentrate, my lack of, concentration, my lack of comprehension skills when you're playing sports. As a matter of fact, the same thing that was going on in the classroom too. It was hard for me to comprehend my studies. Of course, I made pretty good grades. I made B's and C's, but it took one hell of a time to be able to make those B's and C's because, see, I had to concentrate even more because I wasn't comprehending what the teacher was saying. And the reason I wasn't comprehending what the teacher was saying because I was feeling sad, and I didn't want to let nobody know that I was feeling sad, and I didn't want to let anyone know that I was feeling like crying. So I had basically, it felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulder because I was basically trying to hide what I was feeling on the inside. Of course, I always had a smile on my face. I mentioned earlier, about calling people crazy. When you start calling people crazy, well, as a kid, you don't know what's going on. But when you start calling people crazy, that can kind of like do damage to a person's psyche, And I kind of regret calling those people crazy because, of course, I'm not gonna blame it because I was a kid. But let's say I was ignorant to the fact to what was going on. But getting back to my schoolwork, I wasn't able to comprehend what the teacher was saying. Like I said earlier, I made B's and C's, and And it was hard for me to make those B's and C's because, see, I was concentrating, trying to hide something that was on the inside of me, and that was the sadness. So whenever I would get around my friends, I would smile a lot. And, you know, high fives and, yo, what's up, what's going on, and happy and all that. But on the inside, my friends didn't know I felt like crying. You know, I think I mentioned earlier that while I was growing up in the public housing, it was a cemetery across the street from public housing. So whenever I felt like letting out tears, I would go to the cemetery and let out tears because, see, I was hiding from everybody. You know, I didn't want anyone to see me cry. But anyway, when I got much older and started dating women, it started off great. Then all of a sudden, you know, I started feeling sad and depressed. And it was kind of hard for me to have a pretty good relationship because I was hiding everything. But anyway, you know, I think it was 1981. I think I was in 11th grade, and my grandmother, I think I had an appointment with my family physician, and my grandmother had to, you know, I didn't have a car, so she had to take me to the doctor. And knowing when my grandmother takes me to the doctor, she always accompanied me in the examining room. So this one particular day when we was at the doctor's office, and when the doctor called Gary Jones to come back, my grandmother got up and she proceeded to come back to the examining room with me. And I explained to her, I said, well, Mom, you know, I'm 17 years old, you know, I can talk to the doctor by myself. And the reason why I didn't want my grandmother to come to the examining room with me, because, see, I wanted to talk to my doctor personally about how I was feeling. So when I explained to him how I was feeling, he basically said, I think you are suffering from depression. And this is what we're gonna do. This is our plan of action. We're gonna send you to a psychiatrist, and that's when everything froze. The word psychiatrist have a stigma, a label on it. When I was coming up, and it had that type of label that you was crazy, something was wrong. And so I abruptly told the doctor, no, I'm not going to no psychiatrist. That's it. And I walked out of the examining room. My grandma asked me, was it okay? I said, yeah, everything went all right. But when I got in the car, you know, to go home, you know, I can hear the doctor inside my head saying, psychiatrist, psychiatrist, psychiatrist. And I wasn't planning on going to no psychiatrist. I already knew what that was. But as I got older, I found out, you know, it was different. It wasn't anything to be ashamed about. Anyway, in 1982, I graduated from high school. I never smoked, drank, did any drugs when I was in high school, never, period. I went on to North Carolina Central University, you know, for my post high school classes, colleges. When I went to North Carolina Central University, which is located in Durham, North Carolina, I realized that heavy feeling followed me to college. And when you get to college and you're on your own and you have so many people and so many activities to do, and you have that sad feeling, it's kind of like, now I'm in a strange place, so where do I go to cry? And so I couldn't really just cry. Now I'm grown. I'm 18. Where do I go to cry? I don't know the city. I can't really cry in my class. I mean, you know, in my dormitory, hell, you know, roommate might hear it, or the roommate next door might hear it. So I was basically struggling. So when I used to go in the yard late on during the night, I used to get with some friends and stuff. And that's when I started drinking. So when I started drinking and stuff, I felt pretty good. You know, I felt like a normal person. You know, drinking made me feel normal. So as a matter of fact, prior to me going to my classes in the morning time, it wasn't anything for me to pick up a beer. I think I was drinking private stock before I started drinking the Budweiser. It wasn't anything for me to pick up a beer in the morning time, drink it, and then go to class. That was like a habit for me. Then later on, hanging around with some friends and some people back home, that's when the drugs came out. You know, the party scene come out, the drugs come out, and that's when I had started snorting cocaine. Cocaine made me energetic, you know, and I mean, I was high, up in, you know, I felt pretty good. I didn't feel low. I didn't feel that weight of the world on my shoulder whenever I was snorting cocaine. And then I started using marijuana, and that didn't last long. Marijuana didn't last long. The reason why marijuana didn't last long, because anything I took that made me paranoid or gave me some type of anxiety, I left it alone quick. So I began to drink a lot, going to class. I always kept my body in pretty good shape. I always did push-ups, lifted little weights, so you know, it was hard for you couldn't look at me and tell me anything was going on, because I had a smile on my face and my physique was on the one. It was pretty cool. I was tight. And that's another thing, you know, people have a tendency to feel like if you look good, you got a pretty good body, and you have a smile on your face, everything's pretty cool. But I'm here to say that's not always the case. Excuse me. So after finishing, my sophomore year in college, I went back home. I met this girl. I already knew her previously, and we started dating. And so I thought that I would be able to share what I was feeling with her. Excuse me. But once I shared how I was feeling, I told her about the depression and how I feel and what the doctor told me. She was like, well, you know, everybody go through a point in their life they feel blue and stuff like that. And I can, by the tone of her voice, I can almost tell that she was kind of rejecting what I was saying. And so, excuse me, it took me a lot to be able to muster up the energy and the courage to share, you know, with the loved one. It took a lot. So when she rejected what I was saying, I went back in the closet. And what I mean by going back in the closet was I would never reveal to anyone how I was feeling, because they was rejecting it, and it made me feel like I couldn't trust anyone. So I went on back to college. In 1986, I graduated from North Carolina Central University and had my degree in criminal justice. So there was an incident prior to me graduating. I had gotten shot in a nightclub, and during that period, you know, I had took 2 bullets to the back, and it messed up my sciatic nerve. So on top of being depressed, and on top of being, you know, not only was I depressed, I was hurting from the bullet wound. It messed up my nerve. So I was depressed, and it was getting worse. My condition was getting worse because I was in so much pain. And so when you're in a lot of pain, that brings on depression too. So that basically exacerbated my condition. I was already depressed. The pain was making me more depressed, because that's what my mind was on all the time. Depressed. Anyway, the next year, I received a job with DC Department of Correction. I left North Carolina, went to DC Department of Correction, and started working in the prison system. And that's when I realized depression was getting worse, because anytime you walk into an environment, a hostile environment, a stressful environment, if you have any type of mental illness, it goes all the way up to the 10th power. And especially the reason why it goes all the way up to the 10th power, if you haven't even gotten help for your mental illness, and if you're still trying to hide your mental illness, and it's compounded with stress after stress after stress after stress, the situation gets worse. So that was 1987, working at Lawton. So I stayed at the DC Department of Correction for like 2 years. And I I got into a lot of fights. I didn't know what was going on. Yeah, I got into a lot of fights. But it wasn't just the fights that I got into. It was the fact that whenever I got jumped on by an inmate, when I was fighting, I started having flashbacks of the gun being pointed in my face and the guy shooting. So anytime a person gotten close to me, I started spazzing out, like somebody called it. You know, you couldn't get close to me without me swinging. And I didn't know those were signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. I would learn later on that I was suffering from PTSD because I had gotten shot. And so every time, you know, I would fight, you know, I had flashbacks of someone, you know, shooting me. So I left DC Department of Correction and moved to North Carolina Department of Correction. I worked as an officer, worked as a case manager, and my caseload, I had a real heavy caseload. We were shortage of staff, and when you shortage the staff, that brings on stress, and then that makes the mental illness get worse. So slowly, you know, my mental illness was getting worse, and slowly, you know, I can feel myself kind of exploding in a way, because I was still hiding what was going on the inside. We could fast forward this thing to 1991, January 1991. I started working with the Department of Justice, with the Federal Bureau of Prison, and at Federal Prison Camp Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. So when I was working there, you know, the job was pretty cool. You know, I was just an officer at the time. Then I think 18 months later, I became a lieutenant. So when you're a lieutenant, you're a supervisor, it brings on more stress because your superiors are putting more pressure on you to get things done, and you were responsible for running a whole entire institution. And most of the time you run a whole entire institution, you need to be fully staffed, which at that time we wasn't fully staffed. So whatever happened, the blame comes on to the operation lieutenant, especially the 4 to 12 shift, because the operation lieutenant, from the 4 to 12 shift and from the 12 to 8 shift, the operation lieutenant runs the whole entire institution. So if something happens, the blame falls on operation lieutenant, which was me at the time. So that was more stress. It was adding up, more stress. My depression, my anxiety was getting worse. I had more responsibilities. Okay, then I got married. And when I got married, my marriage life wasn't the best. I had 2 young children. I was trying to make it. My wife wanted me to be a yes boy, and I was trying to be a man to be able to raise my family, so there was a lot of things going on in my household. But anyway, in July 1995, I got promoted to a senior lieutenant at the Federal Correctional Institution in Tallahassee, Florida. So when I moved my family up to Florida, things began to get worse in my household. And then I had, as a senior lieutenant, going to the Federal Correctional Institution in Tallahassee, that was more stress on me. So now I'm a senior lieutenant. I got to supervise the junior lieutenants under me. So the captain was putting more and more pressure on me. And I was having a lot of anxiety, you know. But if I would have come out and accepted that I had a condition and started getting help from it, I think my career would have lasted a little longer. But anyway, October 1995, I found myself fighting in a riot. I had to take, you know, I was a special operation team lieutenant, and I had to take a team down to Marietta, Florida, because a riot was going on, a hostage was being held, and here I am. I just said that I was the Special Operation Response Team Lieutenant. I'm still in a supervisory capacity. I'm taking my men inside of a prison that was burning, hostage, and those men that I was taking inside that prison, I was responsible for them. I had to give orders to shoot, if it was necessary, everything fell on me. So that was a lot of stress. So after fighting in the riot, I come back, you know, we have to get debrief. And the warden talked to you, psychiatrist talked to you. I should have said something to a psychiatrist then, but they want to know how you feel going into a hostile situation. And some people couldn't deal with it, because some people, they had to resign, because anytime you think going into a hostile situation, you think you can handle it until you go into a hostile situation and try to retrieve a person that is being held hostage. And you got like 2,000 inmates out there, you know, burning things up, running around, fighting and threatening, saying, if you come over here, we're gonna take you out. Even though we had the guns, you know, even though we had the sting grenade, even though we had the 9 millimeters, if it was called for. So that was a lot of stress. Anyway, going back to the institution, spoke with the warden, and we had a debrief, and that was cool. So this is 1995. Now my condition has gotten worse. I'm still smiling, and I'm still hiding it. It seemed like each day, each year, the fact that I didn't say anything, the reason why my condition got worse, because I hid everything. It was like, just like building a dirt pile. You keep putting dirt on top of dirt, and it keep piling up, keep piling up, and keep piling up, and keep piling up. And sooner or later, you just feel like you have the world on your shoulders. And that's how I felt. So the condition at worst was bad. Going into my home was bad, because my wife and I was struggling. We was arguing a lot. So that didn't make the condition, any better. Anyway, I felt myself about to have a nervous breakdown. I felt myself thinking crazy thoughts and what I was gonna do with my captain if I continued to be pushed. And that's why I was being pushed. And the reason, I didn't go with the status quo. If you tell me something is wrong, I'm not going with it. If my supervisor tell me to do something, I know it's wrong, it's against policy, I didn't do that. I was never a yes boy. I treated people with respect. So you coming into an institution trying to do the right thing and trying to treat people with respect. And when you have your supervisor trying to tell you, you do what I tell you to do, I don't care what's right or wrong. And my nature wasn't accepting that. So that means the supervisor and everyone else would turn against me, which that brought out more and more anxiety, and depression got worse. So I found myself going, in 1999, I finally gave in and went to see a psychiatrist. In 1999, I hid that from the family. I didn't actually tell the family I was going to see a psychiatrist, but I was going to see a psychiatrist on the low. So he started administering medication, and which was made my condition worse. Because prior to me going to psychiatrist, I was still drinking a lot. You couldn't do illegal drugs, not working with the Department of Justice, because you had to take a urine test. But I drank, go home, I drank. I would sit in my driveway. I didn't want to go inside the house because I knew it was gonna be an argument, so I drank inside my, in my garage. And then I didn't want to go to work because I knew I was gonna get, treated. It was like going to work, I was going to a hostile situation. So drinking, going to work, I felt bad. I didn't want to come home because I felt bad. I didn't have a way out, so I continued to drink. I couldn't do the drug, like I said, because I had to take a urine test. So anyway, when I went to a psychiatrist, he told me to start drinking. He wanted to administer some medication to me, in which during that time, I was beyond going to see therapy. I had to say, if you catch mental illness early, if you accept it earlier and start getting help, then you may not have to take any type of medication. But I had hid this thing all my entire life. So therefore, I didn't have any choice but to take the medication. But when I realized when I was taking the medication, I felt normal. again. I didn't drink. I didn't have to use the alcohol to. The pills made me feel the same way the alcohol made me feel. Relaxed, happy, like I was, happy-go-lucky. But when I was taking the medication, and normally when I used to go to the gym, I used to have a lot of stress, and then when I realized the working out, when I go to the gym and I feel depressed, it used to be when I left the gym, I felt pretty good. But I noticed when I went to the gym to work out, and when I left the gym, I was still feeling the same. So my condition was getting worse. So I explained that to the doctor. So we got on the course of medication and stuff like that. So often when I go back for my follow-up appointment, first 2 months, I said, well, I feel pretty good. He said, how's everything at home? I said, it's still worse. He said, how's everything at the job? I said, it's even worse. And then after I think the 3rd month, when I was taking the medication, I no longer felt pretty good anymore. And so when I explained to the doctor that I wasn't feeling good anymore, and he said, what's going on? And when he asked me what was going on, he already knew what was going on. He said, let me tell you something, Gary. And I'm going to tell you like this, and I'm going to be straight up with you. How in the hell do you expect me to help you get better? Because once you told me you took the medication, you felt better. Now you tell me the medication not working. Well, we can add some or we can take away and stuff like that. But the real reason the medication is not working is because I'm trying to help you get better, and you going back into a hostile environment, going back into a hostile environment at work, going back into a hostile environment at the house, it's counteracting what I'm trying to do to help you get well. And so until you alleviate those things that's causing you to feel bad, that's when your condition gonna get better, along with the therapy, along with the medication. That's when you get your condition will get better. So anyway, I had in 2000, I was at the job. Me and my captain, we had words, and we really got into a serious argument. And that's when I told the captain, I said, look, man, I'll kill your ass and don't think nothing of it. My condition had gotten worse. I had an attitude, I didn't care anymore. As a matter of fact, that depression manifested itself to anger. I wasn't depressed as much, I was angry all the time. So anyone got out of my way, they had to go, including the captain. And I ain't have any problem going in there, getting my weapon. Not just my weapon, I wanted to beat him to death with my bare hands. Not the weapon, I just wanted to just beat him to death with my bare hands. I wanted to go to the social warden, I wanted to take him out with my hands, not with the guns, because I wanted to make them suffer. So I went back and I told the doctor how I was feeling. He said, look, we need to get you out of that situation and you need to retire. I said, no, I'm not going to retire, because I'm the type of person, and when I start something, I like to finish it. He said, no, he said, I tell you what, Gary, let's get you some rest. He said, I want you to go to the hospital and get some rest. So I thought I was going to the hospital to get some rest. So I checked in at the regular Tallahassee Community Hospital, pretty good. I thought I was going to be in a room getting rest for about a week. So some people came in and got me, and I was like, what the hell y'all taking me at? And said, well, you check in here, but we're taking you to a behavior center. I said, what the hell are you taking me to a behavior center for? The hell why are you taking me to a behavior center? He said, the doctor requested it. And so when I got to the behavior center, the doctor said, look, Gary, I knew if I told you where I was going to send you at, you're going to reject it. He said, but look, your condition is not as bad as the people upstairs. The people upstairs condition is worse. They can't be allowed outside their room. You're down here on the first floor with scientists, computers, lawyers, people that had careers, but they're basically burnt out. I said, oh, okay then, that's fine. As long as I can walk around, listen to my music and stuff like that. So I stayed there for about a week. I felt better. But when I got out of the place, I started getting anxiety again. And depression came back because, like the doctor said earlier, I went right back into that condition again. And he said, look, we need to retire you, and I refused to retire. So fast forward this thing to 2003. I decided to take the doctor's advice and go head on and retire. And so when I retired, I went back. I used to go back and forth to see my doctor. I used to go back, when I retired, I went back and forth. Yeah, I moved to Atlanta, but I was coming back and forth. I was going back and forth to Tallahassee to see my doctor. And he said, Gary, how you doing? He said, I know you feel pretty good. You know, you separated from your wife and you're no longer with the job. I like, I feel the same. He said, well, you can't tell me you're feeling the same, Gary. I mean, you are no longer in that hostile environment. How can you say you're feeling the same? I said, well, hell, man, I dream about the same shit every night. He said, dream about what? I said, I dream about going inside the institution, they're attacking me, and I'm thinking about hurting them. I said, that's the same particular dream every damn night that I have. So basically, it's almost like I'm still working. He said, why didn't you share that with me before? And I said, why should I share my dreams? The dreams, I can't control those dreams. So dreams are dreams to me. He said, I'm sorry, Gary, you should have told me about those dreams. And he said, you're really suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And that post-traumatic stress disorder basically started back when I got shot and when I was at the institution in Washington, D.C. And when a person stepped at me, I started having flashbacks. It started then. And it got even worse when I got on the job. He said, look, Gary, let's get you started in therapy. Go back to Atlanta. I will refer you to a doctor in Atlanta. You need to go to a therapist. You know, I wish you would have told me about the PTS. I wish you would have told me about the dreams. We could have been treating that. We could have put you in therapy a couple of years before. But now you're going to have to go to therapy because you're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. You're suffering from PTS, major depression. You're suffering from major anxiety. You know, we're going to have to put you on some more medication. How's your attitude now? I said, I feel like hurting someone, Doc. You know, so needless to say, you know, I started going to therapy and started going to a psychiatrist in Atlanta, Georgia. And the psychiatrist I'm with now stated that, he said, Gary, once you accept that you have a condition, that's when the healing begins. If you don't accept that you have that condition, it's gonna be, it's going to be hard for you to get healed. Once you accept that process, that's the first and the most important step. So I accepted that first and most important step. So in a way, after I was diagnosed with mental illness, it was important to sit down with the family and with my children. But prior to that, I'm going to tell you what used to happen. I had the weight of the world on my shoulder. I would come home. My children wanted me to help them with the homework. I was, I couldn't hardly breathe because of the anxiety, and I'm still trying to hide it from the children, trying to hide it from the family. Because, like I said earlier, I didn't tell anyone. Even though I went to a psychiatrist, I really didn't tell anyone. So, trying to help my children with their homework, and trying to take them to amusement parks, I started back drinking and taking the medication at the same time. But whenever I went to the doctor, he took a blood test and he seen that I was drinking again. But anyway, we're gonna fast forward. I called my children and told them to come to the living room. And I explained it then. I came out and I told them, I said, Daddy has a condition. It's called depression, anxiety. And so whenever you would ask me questions, I'm talking to my children now, and whenever I used to get agitated with you all, it wasn't because I didn't love you all. It wasn't because of that. It's because I had a condition that caused me to be agitated and I didn't want to take medication. So I apologize for getting agitated with you all. But my question is now, my question to you now, do you feel sad? Do you feel anger? Now, I'm talking to my children now, because see, if they would have told me that they were feeling sad, that they were feeling angry, I would have immediately got them some type of help, because I wasn't going to allow them to grow up and they have depression and they be in the same conditions as I. So I was going to nip that right on in the bud. Because see, that depression was so real to the point where, can you imagine looking at your children or looking at your loved one and you don't have any feelings at all? You know, you just going through the emotion. You're going through the motion as far as a father raising your children, but you're looking at your bloodline and you can't feel. You don't have any feelings at all. And so that was kind of, I look at my children and it was sort of like, I know they're my children, but I can't feel that love. And see, that mental illness will make you feel that way, that you can't feel that love. But anyway, like I said, I set my children down, I explained to them what was going on. I asked them whether or not they had, were they sad, were they angry and stuff like that, and they said no. And so I knew right then that they didn't have depression, because I was glad that they didn't have depression. But anyway, when you suffer from mental illness and things of that nature, you feel kind of like detached from the world. You detach from anyone. You like to be by yourself. You don't really like to be around people. You just detach yourself from the world. And that's how mental illness feel like for the most part. So I'm gonna tell you, if you don't know what depression feels like, if I didn't do a real good job and making you feel how I felt, I'm gonna read something to you that makes you feel the same. It's gonna make you feel, it's gonna get my point across. And this was at my worst state. And this is a letter from a friend. And this is at my worst state that my friend wrote to the Social Security Disability, where I can get my disability because I had to retire because of mental illness. This is what he experienced. This is what he's saying. And I'm reading from my book, Still I Rise, Manage Depression. Learn to live a balanced life with mental illness. So I'm reading a chapter 14 from my book. And it's called The Powers to Be, a letter from a friend. As early as the dawn of this brand new day, Tuesday, April 14th, 2009, I will receive one of the many similar calls received over the past 20 years from my lifelong friend, Garry Lamont Jones. He would go on to divulge the darkness of the life he has lived for more than 2 decades. A life now described by many as psychoanalytic experts as symptomatic of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Jones, as some affectionately call him, has suffered greatly, and I have seen perhaps more of this suffering than most in his inner circles, families, and friends. Growing up in a small town in North Carolina, Garry has always been a poster child, so we thought, not knowing he suffered from depression that had not been diagnosed or even recognized for that matter. He always bore a smile that lit up the room he entered. However, few would come to really know the pain behind the smile. Jones was a walking misery, robed in garments that glittered as gold. Today, he lives a life secluded, for the most part, from the real world. On most days, Jones preferred to stay inside and gaze at the ceiling or sleep, hoping to awake and discover that this was all a nightmare. But to no avail, the suffering continues. It was during Garry's tenure as the employee of the Federal Bureau of Prisons that I began to see signs of major depression. During this same time period, Garry was the victim of spousal abuse, both verbal and emotional, mental, which plunged him further into the depths of utter frustration, bewilderment at his place of employment. Not to mention the strife he endured while attempting to handle the challenges at work and at home with a wife determined as vehemently as the powers of the job to destroy the very fabric that somewhat held his life intact. As far back as the year 2000, Garry began making visits to the state of Maryland, where I, one of his closest confidants, lived to get away from the struggles of life at home with his wife and a job in Tallahassee, Florida. But it only proved to get worse. For the most part, Jones would lodge at my dwelling, where he always proclaimed to find peace in the midst of the storm of his depressed life. Having been hospitalized in early 2000 for this very depression, he resorted to my abode to recuperate. So he thought, only to find the condition worsening as he returned to his home and place of employment. Jones would lose his most cherished aunt, with whom he stayed the last month or so of her life. This too would take a toll on my friend, lunging into the abysses of deep sorrow and utter disgust with life on its terms. His beloved grandmother would depart his life not long after, the woman who was mother to Jones, having reared him to make the best of his life and never given up. His uncle, one who assisted him in upbringing, would precede his grandmother in death by just a few months. By now, Jones has given up completely. He suffered a fall as a result of passing out on the day before the news of his grandmother's grave illness and subsequent demise. He would have to undergo surgery on his left elbow and soon have the same surgery on his right elbow. Jones suffered much now, both mentally and physically. His kidneys are failing him, anxiety is at its highest peak, and his level of comprehension of even the simplest matters of importance has plummeted. Garry's love of family has always held high esteem, but even his family now has its place. His children and grandchildren see a man constantly reaching out and helping them progress in life, not even having a clue that this man is in so much inexplicable pain. He mustered up the grace and the courage to keep them unaffected. They too witnessed the abuse from their mother and only hope for better for the man, their dad, who always went out his way to make life grand for his posterity. Jones went through so much turmoil at the news of denial of Social Security disability benefits, which gave him a glimmer of hope of coming up out of his pain, enabling him to do some of the things he learned to love, advocating for the justice for the underprivileged, incarcerated citizen of the society. His love for advocacy for justice now, he hollers speaks of the grassroots organization he lost to Weber. He constantly speaking of not wanting to live longer. Suicidal thoughts are prevalent indeed. We all wish we had our friend back. He has gone away, it seems, and I believe he can return if help is rendered both financially and medically. Jones had pulled away, but I believe, as he once so firmly believed, that his study of the word has not really lost its savor. His spiritual life has suffered. Be patient with Jones, for God is not through with him yet. I'm here to do all things that I can do to assist my friends in finding meaningful life and finding meaning in life again. Now, that's what a person with mental illness feels like. But why should I give you my life story without having some type of solution that I can tell you that can help you manage your depression, manage your anxiety, manage your PTSD? I'm not going to leave you without any clues. I'm leaving you, as I come to a conclusion, I'm leaving you with things that you can do to handle their mental illness. And although I was born with mental illness used to control me. Now I control mental illness by taking the proper steps to help myself get better. I'm still under psychiatric care. I still go to therapy, and I still take medication. And I think what I just said, psychiatry, therapy, and medication, is what cause people not to want to go get help. But let me clear this up a little bit. Just because you suffer from mental illness, and depends on the severity of the mental illness, doesn't mean that you have to go see a psychiatrist. You can talk to a friend. If crying makes you feel better, do that. You know, just because you go see therapy doesn't mean they're going to give you medication. If they were to give you medication, it's up to you and your doctor to decide how much medication they're going to give you to be able to operate in life. And then once you get better, the doctor will wean you off the medication, but he can wean you off the medication slow. So that's why people don't want to go get help, because they hear the word psychiatry and the terrible stigma and the terrible label that it has on individuals. And let me tell you what happened. These are some triggers that will trigger your mental illness. I had to learn. I had to study myself. I had to write notes. I had to, whenever I became depressed, whenever I had anxiety, I had to figure out what was I doing during that time or the night before I had anxiety, the night before, the day before the depression came on. What was going on at the time? And I realized the triggers, I call these triggers, things that set my depression off, things that set my mental illness off. And one of the triggers is lack of exercise. I have always worked out, but I stopped exercising, and I noticed when I did exercise, it made me feel better. Now I'm on medication and supposed to make you feel a lot better. So if you can get some type of exercise, please do that. Walk or do something. Because see, getting out of bed with and you have mental illness and anxiety, it's very hard. But if you can just get out of bed, go to the bathroom. You're gonna have to go to the bathroom anyway, use the restroom. Brush your teeth. Make up the bed. Don't get back in bed, make up the bed. If you don't feel like eating, put on your clothes and go walk. That'll get the blood flowing and stuff like that, and you'll start feeling better. All right, another trigger that triggered my depression. And I was eating the wrong foods. Okay, I started working out. I started getting my exercise, started feeling better. But I started eating the wrong foods. After leaving the gym, I would eat a Big Mac. I always had those specials. Buy one Big Mac and get the other one free. I always had smoothie, but the smoothie that you get from these places, especially McDonald's, have enough sugar in there to cause you to go into a diabetic coma. And see, sugar it spikes you to feel good, and then all of a sudden, you plummet it all the way down. That's why too much sugar will make it happen. For a person that have depression and mental illness and things of that nature, you need to cut away from that sugar. When I started eating vegetables, when I started eating fruits and beans, and when I started just eating properly and did not allow myself to get full, I felt a lot better than when I ate junk food. And the third trigger that triggered off mental illness was the lack of sleep. I always wondered why, if I can recall, I think it was maybe 2010, I remember going to a graduation, but prior to going to a graduation, I stayed up all night. And I woke up, it was Mother's Day, and I wasn't sad because I didn't feel that type of sadness because of Mother's Day and my grandmother wasn't here. I didn't feel that type of sadness. I just felt another type of sadness. I was depressed, but I really wasn't depressed because it was Mother's Day. And I tried to figure out why I went to bed feeling pretty good, but why in the hell am I feeling pretty bad now? Then it hit me. it was the lack of sleep. I had stayed up 24 hours. And so when you allow yourself to get very tired, it can bring on or it can exacerbate your condition. And this is one of the most important triggers that will cause you to stay in a depressed state for a long time. Whenever you go around negative people, I used to feel pretty good. And then when I used to go around people and that's all they talk about, negativity. And then when I left that person, I fell into a deep depression. And I wonder why every time I get around these particular people, I fall into a depression. And it was because I allowed myself to be around a lot of negative activity. I allowed myself to be around a lot of negative thoughts. And now, if you have my phone number, and if you call me, and I know that you're a negative person, I wouldn't pick up that phone, because you're not going to mess up my day. And it's sad to say, sometimes I wouldn't even pick up the phone of my own mother, because I didn't need to hear the whining. I don't need that type of whining and complaining and stuff that caused my condition to get worse. Now this is a last trigger. This is something you really can't help. It's called seasonal affective disorder. And you only suffer from mental illness during this time of the year. And normally during this time of the year, it's daylight saving time, when the hours are cut, not the hours really getting cut short, but darkness come early around 5:30. It begin to get dark. The sunlight is no longer there anymore. And people get depressed more so in the wintertime. That's why it's called seasonal affective disorder. But when the spring and summertime come along, when the light is out, people start feeling better. So I have shared with you my life story. I went into some deep details. I poured out my soul. Of course, I'm not embarrassed. And I told you what to do to seek help. And I gave you a couple of triggers to stay away from, to allow your condition to get better. If I left anything out of my life story, you can always pick up my book, Still I Rise, Manage Depression, Learning to Deal with Mental Illness. It can be found at Barnes & Nobles. It can be found on Amazon.com, Books A Million, any type of, if they don't have it in the stores, they can order it for you. You can go online, you can order my books. Also go to our website, GaryLJones.com. Hopefully my testimony has given you hope. With the love of your friends, family, the support system, your doctor, you can live a normal life just like anyone else. You can, for me, I used to compete in weightlifting. I did everything that everyone else done. You can create a business, you can be an entrepreneur, you can basically do anything that you want to do. Do not allow this condition to hold you back. But the most important thing, family, friends, your wife, your fiance, just a loving family and friend, and that big support system. As a matter of fact, you can do more than the average person. As a matter of fact, some of the people who suffer from mental illness, they have created a lot of things that you don't even know about. But they suffer from mental illness. So that goes to show you, with the love, support, and your friends, you can reach the highest peak. Thank you. The Garry Jones Story.